for the Plym Peacemakers demonstration video for March 2021, and there was agreement last month that this time we would concentrate on some log cabin. So to start off with, I'm going to be using the Modern Guild tutor box, and it's tutor box number 5, and this one is Modern Negative Space Log Cabin. And for this you really need lots of your background fabric in strips, and you also need your contrast. Now, on the first sample I've done, I've used various scraps of white and cream for the background, and I've used purple fabric for the contrast. This is the tutor box sample, which I've done with the cream background fabric and the purple contrast, and so that's what we'll be doing for the tutor box to start off with. And then in terms of log cabin, you can see some other blocks I've made here in the past. So this is more of a traditional log cabin layout. The centre square is normally a red or a yellow to represent the fire in the hearth, or an alternative version was the yellow would have been the sun shining through, but whichever, I didn't go with that. This is some cat fabric that I had. And then normally you divide your block into light and dark. Now these are pretty much all the same tone, they're all the same sort of hue, but I just liked the look of that one. So that's although it's a traditional layout with the logs coming around the centre, because of the colours I've chosen, it looks far more modern. Now from that, there's a variation here where I've done sort of 4 mini blocks. These were done as part of Abby Ann's wittering. This was a leftover one that didn't make it into the quilt, but you've got 4 mini log cabin blocks there joined together, so that's a possibility. And then another one here, again this is pretty standard, I think, a standard sort of thing. You've got your cats in the centre there, and this time I've used the orange and the lime and the pink and the purple on the other side. But again, it's a pretty standard variation. This is also a log cabin variation, but this is far more improv style. You've still got your centre block and your logs coming around from that, but this was just using scraps, and this was a quilt as you go technique. So all of the quilting's done as you make it. This one was turned into a cushion for MacDog, so you can see on the other side again you've got your centre square for the log cabin, and then the pieces just follow around from there. So that's something else that you can do. This is also a log cabin block, but what I've been doing is some improv mosaic stuff, and so with this one it is a log cabin, but before I attach the first piece round on the first round, you add a strip of black and then your log, and again then on number 2 you've added a strip of black plus your log, and again you can see that here, and then the final one which comes across the top, and then that just continues around. So that's also a log cabin variation. The black gives it that lovely stained glass effect. Starting off with the tutor box, we need to cut our centre square at 3.5 inches, and then the logs for the first round are 1.5 inches wide, and then logs cut only 1 inch width of your strip, and that, they say, gives a finished block of 7 inches. So when we've joined 4 of those together, we should get something resembling a 14-inch panel that you could use either in a quilt or perhaps make it a bit bigger for a cushion or even a posh pocket. So without further ado, I'll get started. Started making my tutor box sample, and the first step is to take your centre square, your 3.5-inch square, and then you start adding the logs. What's really important is that you follow them around in one direction, don't suddenly change direction. So the first one I always like to put on the right hand side, and then the next one I'll have my log at the top and add a strip again down on that side. The other thing the instructions tell you to do is with your 1-inch strips is to join your background piece to your contrast on the short edges. So I've started joining some of those together ready for the next round, which will come in a bit. So that's where we are. So I've made my 4 blocks, or started them with the first rounds done, you can see there. So the next stage is to add one of these strips. So this was my side 1, the shorter one. You always tell that that's the one that you're working on because you get 2 seams now to look at. So this one will go here. So what we're aiming to do when we add these logs, which has got a piece of the background plus the contrast, we only want to have the contrast in opposite diagonal corners. So this side will always have white here, as will this, and then we'll have pink up there. So the next side is going to be this one. Again, you can see that I've moved from here. Tell it's the right one because I've got 2 seams to work with, and so again I'm going to add my pink there, leaving this corner here with the cream, and we're going to work around the block just like that. Of course you've got 4 blocks to do to join together. I've added the second strip on this second round, and now it's time for the third strip. So it's this side here. Again, we've got the background colour there in the top, and we're going to have the pink down in this corner. So I need to add this strip here, and then the final one will go on along the bottom once I've done this one. The first of the coloured rounds has gone on, so that's the 4 blocks as they are at the moment. So I've got to add another 2 of the rounds on each block. This is the finished tutor box sample. The 4 blocks have been joined together, and it's got a sort of pink blob in the middle, or red, whatever colour it is, and there's some more of the red on the outer edges. I've added a 2-inch frame to the outside, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do with it. It might be another small quilt sample, or it might become a cushion, who knows. It needs a good iron. I'm going to make a start on the improv log cabin quilt as you go, and I've found a piece of wooding, and I've folded it into quarters so I know where the centre point is, and I've found a little 4 patch in my orphan block pile. I'm just going to put that in the centre of the wooding so you can see, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to stitch down this in vertical lines to hold it to the wadding, and then we'll start building the log cabin around the pink. So you need a variety of scraps, and I've attacked my bag of pink scraps, so I think these are all going to be shades of pink. If you want to separate it into light and dark, you can, but I think mine is just going to be pretty scrappy, pretty random, and they're all different widths, so there's no right or wrong here, but the first thing for me to do is going to be to sew this patch to the centre of the wadding. I'm ready to start attaching this square to the wadding. I don't know if you can see, but I've got the dual feed on the sewing machine, so if you haven't got dual feed, then you would probably want to put your walking foot on, because we are quilting this at the same time as we're attaching it. So start somewhere in the centre and then work across, and I'm going to space them out the width of the foot, the stitches. I've stitched the first line, and I've used the thread cutter to cut the thread there, so now I can just go back up to the top and do the next row. As I say, it's the width of the foot away from the first line of stitching. I have stitched down this side of the centre line. I don't know if you can see the quilting stitches or not, but now I've done that half, I've moved and I'll sew the width of the foot away out to the other side. The centre block has been stitched in place, so what we do now is similar to the log cabin we did on the tutor box. We find a piece of fabric that will fit onto this side. So what we're going to do is stitch that down and then flip it out, and then we're going to do the same quilting down this piece. So that'll be our first one to go on there. I've stitched this one on and quilted the lines out to the side, and the next thing now is to get a strip that can go on here. This is pretty improv, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, this one's just a bit low, but you would line it up with the bottom of there. It doesn't matter if you want to do it wonky, you can do it wonky, because it really is improv. So the next one we'll get will be to fit this side, and we'll work round like we did on the tutor box sample. So the first round of our log cabin has been done. This is the first one we put on, and then the second, third and the final one. So now we're going to put a strip down here and keep working around. If you want to, if your pieces aren't long enough to do the whole side, you can join strips together. So you sew those together first, and then you would sew that in as one unit on the side. So you haven't got to have whole pieces of fabric long enough to do each piece. So this is the finished quilt as you go log cabin. You just fill up the wadding with your strips coming down in the rounds that you've got, so you can see how that works. This one's really more of an improv one, but it's the same concept of the log cabin. You've got your centre block and then the logs coming around. So this one, that's the back. So obviously if you were going to use this as a quilt, you'd need to put a backing on it now, This is the back. Now if you wanted that to be a quilt, you'd have to put a backing fabric on now, and then I would suggest quilting in the ditch, just to hold the backing to it. First of all, this needs to be squared off, because basically you just fill your piece of wadding with your log cabin block, and then it overhangs a bit at the edge, so you just need to square it off, and then you can either make that like a cushion or a little quilt or something. It's quite a nice little technique. For the next log cabin demonstration, I thought I would do the mosaic log cabin. So with this you need your logs. I've got sort of light and dark ones going on here, and you need some 1-inch strips of black. So the first thing is, with your centre block, we're going to add a strip of black to the side, and then we'll join the first log to the black fabric. So the first black strip has been attached here to the right hand side of the centre block, and the seam has been pressed towards the black fabric. So now going to join the first log to the little black strip. And so the first log has been attached, and again the seam has been pressed towards the black fabric, so that's what it looks like on the wrong side. So what I need to do now is join another black piece here at the bottom seam, and then this piece will join to the black. So the first round is done. Got the light side here, so it was 1, 2, 3, 4. On the back you can see all the seams have gone towards the black fabric. So for round 2 it's exactly the same. We're going to attach, each time we need to add a strip, we're going to add a black piece first, which gives us our grouting on the mosaic. So that's the way it's done. So I'll carry on with round 2. This is the finished mosaic or stained glass log cabin. It's actually got an odd number of rounds on it. There's 2 rounds, 2 logs on the dark side, but we've got 3 on this side, just because I wanted it to be slightly bigger so I can make it into a posh pocket. So that's quite good, I'm pleased with that. So I think that's another variation on the log cabin. It's quite easy, quite striking with the black strips. You can make this more improvised. You can have curved black pieces, or you can have different sizes on the black, which is supposed to represent the grouting. You can also try different colours. You can have white or different colours there. I just like the black. So that's 3 things we've done. In terms of the log cabin, I know some people had asked for some traditional. I have posted onto the Plym Piecemakers Facebook group a YouTube video from Abby Ann, because she's done lots of log cabin variations, so it might be worth checking out her YouTube channel to look at the different log cabin variations that she did. And if I get time, I'll dig out my